Allow members of the public to ask questions. Our management staff will respond as we can. And then we will move on to mayor and council. But before that, I wanted to say, in case we do get the YouTube feed running, anybody participating by YouTube will be able to ask questions at comment@oceanviewdelaware.gov. Again, questions would be read aloud and we'll attempt to respond to them. Once we go to mayor and council for their discussion and provision of feedback to myself and the staff, again, we'll be responding to questions. And then after that, we will open back up to the public again for follow-up questions. Okay? So with that, we'll move right along. So this slide here, and there's copies available, shares what we've referred to as prime considerations that have been included in the proposed FY23 operating budget. Most importantly, to most, or at least I think so, we've included a 3-cent tax rate reduction, which equals to an 11% reduction. We also share here that the FY23 proposed budget includes capital projects or purchases at a higher level than in recent years, primarily to fund replacement vehicles in advance due to delivery delays we've been experiencing, as well as addressing additional other needs. As outlined in the budget message, we include a cost of living wage increases of 6.605% based on the CPI. In addition, there's a new seasonal part-time codes employee that's been added. You may recall that we did have this in our budget 2 years ago, but we abandoned it at that time because of the COVID and the pandemic. Lastly, we've also adjusted revenues down by 27.8% in association with anticipated reductions in permit fee collections for new homes construction. On this slide, you're going to find the FY23 proposed operating budget summary for our departments, and it includes the current year's adopted budget and out-year forecasting. I point out that in FY23, the yellow column, we show the use of $188,735 from unassigned fund balance, as well as the forecasted remaining unassigned fund balance of the 2.4 that we expect to remain available. I'll just remind everybody that the fund balance is where our reserves for operations is maintained. The $2.6 million at the bottom of the green column is the FY21 audited fund balance, which we started the current fiscal year with, and we anticipate ending FY22 in April with this amount at least. This slide shares our capital improvement program funding sources. The out years, of course, become more fine-tuned as estimates and needs for the town projects, equipment, and supply needs are better known. Our capital funding sources include the general fund, the Capital Replacement Trust Fund, grant funding, the Street Repair and Replacement Trust Fund, and a one-time contribution from the Indian River School District. The FY23 capital program does not anticipate any water utility projects. We also expect to update our reserve study in FY24. It was last completed in 2019. And that will further assist us with our out-year planning. On this slide, you will find that our FY23 revenue projections in a pie chart, with the largest section in orange representing revenue collections from our property taxes. And this includes the early payment discount that's been offered for the last 2 years, and per the direction of council to include it again this year. Transfer taxes are our second largest revenue source, and again, I share that share that as we're built out, our transfer tax revenues decline due to the reduction in new home sales. Thankfully, we do not count on these funds for our operations, so that's going to be helpful to us in the future. It is, however, safe to assume that the general fund revenue will be needed in the future to help support our infrastructure that are now funded by transfer tax revenues into our trust funds. So this drives home the importance, I think, of our efforts to improve our infrastructure, address property maintenance issues, maintain a strong focus on our public safety, offering opportunities to promote a sense of community, etc. We've talked about this, and a lot of it's in the budget message. But these efforts should help to keep our existing home sales attractive and our property values up. Of course, being 2 miles from the Atlantic doesn't always helps as well. I can share a good statistic. As of the end of January 2022, the first 9 months of FY22, which is May 1st, 21 to January 31st, that just passed, our transfer tax revenues are based on the sale of 57 new homes and 136 existing homes. So this is very good news in Ocean View with the current level of new homes that are available to purchase outside of the town. Here we share some commentary on the full town reassessment. Ocean View has committed to a full town reassessment every 5 years since 2007. That makes the 22 effort the fourth commitment to keeping up with property values in relationship to our taxing and with the overarching goal of remaining equitable. In comparing out-year forecasting for property tax revenues that we completed in FY22 for this year, you can see here that we were very close, having the difference coming to be only $281,000 higher, and including the items shared on the earlier slide, the tax rate reduction, increases to capital improvement, wage rate increases, the part-time position, and the permit revenue decline. Moving down to the bottom portion of this slide, we share that our full reassessment has ultimately resulted in our ability to recommend the 3-cent tax rate reduction while also absorbing increased cost and building permit fee reductions, everything just mentioned, without impacting services and still delivering an equitable property tax within our community. The next slide shares additional assessed value information, but of course, until all informal and formal appeals are completed, the total town reassessed value may change. We shared the most up-to-date information from February 10th. To clear up and share any comments that we fielded, first and foremost, committing to a set number of years to complete our town reassessment is a good thing. Doing so effectively combats suggestions that we, staff and our council, selected 2001 to complete the reassessment because we knew the market was up. We have had at least one person make such a statement or question that. But the truth is, however, we didn't select it. It's been the plan since 2007 for every 5 years. It's also likely worth pointing out that if the market were down, there's a good likelihood that we may have had to recommend a tax rate increase or a reduction in services. Here we have our FY23 expense projections. Public safety in purple is our largest overall expense at $2,016,000. Public works shows as the second largest, but that's only because that's where we expense our street repair funds. Without the street repair and sidewalk funds, Public Works makes up $464,000 848 of this slice of the pie. So how does Ocean View compare? On this slide, we share detail related to personnel costs as a percentage of our operating budget, 51.3% for Ocean View, with between 40 and 70% being the common range for local governments. As last year, we provided some comparison from other nearby towns, was updated for Bethany since the first presentation was made, as we got that information. I think you all have that. While none of our these towns are apples to apple comparisons in regard to services provided or number of employees, we think this shows that our personnel costs are in line. This slide shares detail on our services. The full information is available on our website and has been since, I believe, 2019. And we also have some copies here at the rear of the room. I can share that our staff, as I think you know, is plenty busy. And we receive a lot of positive feedback for the efforts to address the problems of the community and to keep Ocean View desirable. Much of that relates back to our attempt to follow our comprehensive plan. Our high resale levels during the first 9 months of FY23 also sends a strong message. People are taking advantage of the market value when they're selling, and Ocean View is a desirable place to purchase a home. Okay, so I thank you for your attention, and the management staff and I are here and welcome feedback and questions. Russ, are we up on YouTube? Okay, so I just want to state, if you are participating by YouTube and you have a question that you already know, go ahead and email it to us at comment@oceanviewde.gov, and you can do that at any time, and we'll be keeping an eye for that. Okay, that completes it. I guess we can move on to the public, if that's your pleasure, if anybody has any questions.
Well, before we turn it to citizen privilege,
Okay.
are there any comments from town council?
No.
Okay. So we will turn it over to citizen privilege. You can ask any question related to the presentation and the budget. If you do come up to the podium, please state your name and your address and ask the question. At the same time, people on YouTube can ask a question at any time, and they will be forwarded to us. So.
Mr. Mayor, Dick Jennison, 33112 Ogre Drive. My question is pertaining to, is there a second citizen's privilege coming up?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then I will hold back.
Okay. Seeing no other questions or not receiving anything yet from YouTube, I think we will move forward to the review and discussion of the 2023 General Fund and Water Fund operating budget and 5-year capital improvement plan. Is that you again?
No, for you all to have your questions or comments.
All right, so we have had a chance to look at the budget for a little while now. Are there any comments or questions that you would like to ask? Yes, Frank.
I have a question, and it has to do with our out years. First of all, I want to say that I'm extremely impressed with how this budget was written up, so I commend you and Dawn for the expertise that you demonstrated in writing this up. I noticed in the out years that we have no tax increase, and I wanted just to make sure that we factored in. I know it's a temporary figure, but we did factor in. In fact, it'd be a cost of living increase for our town employees. That's factored in for our out years.
The out year has 1.5%, each of the out years.
And I know that fluctuates depending on CSI is.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my only question.
Any other questions? Yes.
So I have one. Are we using these mics or those mics?
We have a directional mic, so I'll just.
Which do you want him to use?
You can just, you don't need to pass it, just talk.
Well, first I want to thank you for the additional data, most of which I asked for in the last meeting. For example, now we know that what the average increase in the assessed value is 25.96% or 26%. That's the average. So now that we have that number, we can figure out what the average tax hike will be. And it works out to 11.88%. That's a double-digit tax hike. If you want to know, see the arithmetic, I'm happy to show the arithmetic. For example, a property that was assessed at $300,000 last year, using a rate of 2.678, the taxes would have been $803. Now, that property has jumped up 26% to $378,000. And using the reduced rate of 2.378, you get $898. So that works out to 11.88%. So my question is, after the 8% last year, you are now asking for an 11.88 average tax hike for the residents. Some will pay less, some will pay more, obviously. That's 20% in 2 years. So one question that comes to mind is, are we living beyond our means at this point? So I'll leave it at that.
I'm not sure if there was a question there. The only thing that I would point out that the reassessment, although it does factor into the tax, and I certainly understand what you're saying, it's an adjustment to the value of the homes. The higher market value of the homes. So yes, you do ultimately have to set the tax rate, but they are two separate things. We're not involved in the assessment, and it's a common factor, but I'd have to ask mayor and council if they think we're living beyond our means, and if you have that feeling, I would suggest that you provide feedback about what you want us to stop doing.
Well, I think commenting about whether or not we're living beyond our means, in fact, what you, the comment you just said in terms of the assessments, I don't think we are living beyond our means. We have asked for a lot of different things in our comprehensive plan. We're trying to meet the goals of that plan. We are now the fourth year in a row, the safest town in Delaware. Our comprehensive plan has received wide praise throughout the United States as the best comprehensive plan in the U.S. We have provided a lot of entertainment benefits to our citizens. That has increased. I don't think anyone is asking whether or not that is beyond our means, because it makes this town recognized, and I think the turnout of each of those events has only gotten larger. So that's my personal opinion. Any other comments, questions?
I would agree with you, Mr. Mayor. Plus, I would also look at the fact that on resale, this impacts on resale, when people go to resell their properties, that because we offer such a high quality level of service, that the resale properties would be at a higher rate than what would normally be. So, do I think we're living beyond our means? No.
Any other questions or comments?
Looking at the breakdowns on what was presented, I'm not seeing anything as well as in regards to delivered above our means. Things do go up as a percent of total. That's just part of reality. But the difference over the years, last few years, of what Ocean View offers as a town is much different than it was in the past. And that goes from streets to events to everything. Simple things like sweeping streets. Simple things that are not always simple, like snow removal. It was a seamless snow removal, and I've seen it when it hasn't been. So that's just one example, and I think we're doing the right things, and we're trying our best, looking at the other towns, to try to control our labor, full-timers, but also protect our associates.
Any other comments before I open it up to citizens' privilege? If not, we are at the second citizens' privilege, where you may now come up and ask any question related to the budget and presentation.
I'll have to wait in line, Bill.
The line is not long, guys.
Dick Jennison, 33112 Auger Drive. Thank you. And I do have a comment on the, if I may, on the assessment. Although a little confusing up front and a lot of mistakes, I give the town a lot of credit for working with the assessor. I thought he was great, reasonable, understandable. Certainly I would like no increase, but I understand, and I thought working with him was enjoyable. That was nice to have, so just for feedback for you, I think he did a very good job representing the town. I do want to thank the staff also. I thought the budget was very detailed. Was it 200 pages, something in there like that? Very difficult, although a little bit all over the place, not familiar with government budgets. I have run major trade associations in Washington, D.C., so I am familiar with non-government budgeting process. What would be helpful to me as a resident, and I'm sure to the town council next year, would be look at the budget for the year with a forecasted number so you can look at year-end projections. So right now, I'd like to look at 2022 budget and have a projection for year-end fiscal year 2022, and then compare that projection into the 2023 budget to see if we're over or under on expenses. Without having that, it really doesn't help me a lot to know where we are today. And maybe obviously the town probably knows a lot more where we are with expenses and revenues, but as a resident, I don't know that. So just a suggestion to the council to consider a little more detailed process so we can compare it to a projected number for year-end 2023, whatever fiscal year we're in, so you can compare it to the proposed budget going forward.
Okay, I'd just like to comment about that before we move on.
Sure.
I think we do that on a monthly basis when we have our meetings and go through the budget. The budget director tells us where we are in relation to the budget. So it's not really a projected number that we're getting. We're getting an actual number based and compared to what the budget number is.
Correct.
It's sort of like a projection.
Well, that's actual. When I'm looking at the last 2 months of the year, we still have March and we have April. And when you put the budget together, it's probably, I don't know, another month ago, 2 months ago.
4 months ago.
Yeah, there should be some projection that the staff should look at and say where we think the year is going to be on each one of the line items. And I know it's a projection, but it gives you a starting point where the year is going to end, not on an actual basis, but a projected basis. And you can always update that as you got new information and bringing it forward. That's where I'm talking about. If I may, I have a couple of expense budgeted items that I would recommend to the council for consideration to exclude it from the 2023 budget, if I may. And I refer you to page 22 of the budget booklet, which it talks about the budget process, and I won't read it verbatim, but it's the second paragraph on page 22, which basically says the proposed budget submitted to the town council in the 5-year capital improvement plan should include clear summaries of its content, a list of all capital improvements proposed to be undertaken during the next 5 years, along with cost estimates, funding sources, and recommended time schedules. I think that's a good process to follow. There's 2 line items in the budget that I think should be considered to be removed, and that is specific because it doesn't conform to that. I refer you to page 136 in the budget book under planning support services. There's a, I'm sorry if I'm going too fast, but page 136 is $20,000 in expense budget, but it doesn't give you anything specific to support what that program is for, beyond a description of what it is, but no specific project, no specific grants, nothing that you're going to be working towards. I think that, along with on page 140, the traffic analysis, which is $30,000, and that's forecasted out for 5 years. Both of these items should be removed from the budget, my recommendation. And if there are initiatives that are brought forward to the council, they certainly, staff can bring those initiatives forward for funding approval once those initiatives are identified. There's nothing in there on the traffic study that says we're going to do a traffic study on this road in this time frame and at this amount of money. So I just think that until there's specifics, those can always be brought back to the council for approval.
What was the second one, please?
It's on page 140, traffic analysis. There's no specifics to those programs, and again, staff can come back and ask once they have the specific program lined up, and once there's dollar amounts, they can come back and ask for approval. And you carry a 2-month reserve, so all I suggest you put that in your reserve and you have it in there, but not be identified as a program of expense. Just a suggestion for you to consider.
Do you have any comments on that?
I can start with a comment and then hand it over to Ken. Both of these items, before they are utilized, do come to council. Ken brings them to council before we even use the money. They're in there, and Ken can go into more detail, because we have to have funding before we can even bring it to council. If there's no funding available, then we would not be able to do any of the traffic analysis, which we've done in the past few years. But, I mean, even on your street, we've done, and if it hadn't been in the budget, we would not have been able to do it. It would have been postponed until funding was available.
You do have 2 months reserve, that's all I'm saying.
The reserve is not for everyday use. The reserve is in case of emergency. It's not budgeted. We
Right.
keep in unassigned at least 2 months.
Right.
But we can't use it unless, I mean, it's for emergency purposes.
The council could approve it, right? Okay.
Council could approve it,
Yeah.
yes.
That, again, I just think it's helpful to have specifics attached dollars. Otherwise, it becomes a slush fund for things coming up. If you're going back to the town council, that's great, but I think it should be identified, and that's really my point, how the town wants to handle that. I mean,
He doesn't understand.
page 39 of the budget book, there's a section on media account. Yes, sir.
Have a chance to get there.
It's okay. Yeah, we're good.
I'll slow down. I don't know if I'm limited to 3 minutes, or do I have a little more flexibility with that, Mr. Mayor? 3 minutes? 4.
You can go ahead.
Am I okay? There's the MediaCom dollar amount for revenue, I think that's understated. I don't know why we reduced it down, and I don't know where that 20% figure is sourced from in there as the cut the cord analysis to lower that revenue stream. I think in Ocean View, with a median age of 59 and a half, most of those cutting the cord on cable are in a younger generation, and I think there will be some cord cutting moving away, but I think that's really understated. From my research, it's anywhere from 8 to 10% of cord cutting going forward. I think that's an understated revenue moving forward in 2023, 24, and so forth. I don't think we should be dropping it as much as being dropped. Just a suggestion and a comment. And what I also ask for is there is no consideration in the in that cable line item for Comcast coming in. There's no. We've got a 5-year budget. Is there any plan for additional revenue coming in from them? And should that be included in this forecast or 5-year plan? More of a question.
Yeah, I can answer that. So if you think about it, if we are fortunate enough to get Comcast to come or anybody else to come in for competition, this revenue is only related to cable TV,
Right.
not internet. So everybody who signs up for, whether it be Mediacom or if it's Comcast or some other entity, there's a percentage that they pay the town. So if it's the same amount of people and they switch to one or the other, their cable agreements, the franchise agreements will be exact because they make sure that they're not paying or doing anything more than the other competitor. So essentially, we would be receiving the same neutral. It just would be some from one and some from another.
I was just asking, not knowing whether there's additional revenue coming in because of the potential with Comcast.
Yeah. And I will say that this is a very conservative revenue forecast because we didn't want to get caught off guard if things moved quicker where we didn't have the revenues. Dawn and I actually talked about, taking a better look at it and maybe upping it, the forecast in the future years.
Yeah, in my research, not that you have to follow my research, it's 8 to 10% based upon the demographics in this town versus a broad number, that's all. But you can do your own sourcing if you like. Are there any funds in the budget earmarked for either stormwater management or road safety improvements on Ogre Drive? I didn't see any, maybe I missed it.
There is not.
Okay. There was, if I may, a study done on traffic analysis on Ogre Drive that was submitted on September of 2020. And in that study, there was 4 specific recommendations brought forward to the town that the Director of Planning and Zoning said were going to be implemented. And out of those 4, only 1 have been implemented on Ogre Drive. So I'm wondering if it's a money issue, should not that be looked at, knowing that we still have a challenge with speeders on Ogre Drive? And I'm just wondering why that is not in the budget for consideration for 2023. Since it was a recommendation and was told that we're going to be implementing it, I'm just asking.
I actually believe I'm committed to implementing the signing suggestion. Is what I committed to implementing.
Yeah, again, there's one of those recommendations.
And we did. We installed the signs.
There are 2 other sign recommendations.
There are recommendations. I chose to implement the signing recommendation.
Again, I refer to your email that said you're going to implement those recommendations. That's all. Okay, so I have to ask, are they going to be implemented?
I'm just answering your question. That's what I chose to do.
All right, not to do it, okay. Again, a safety issue on Ogre Drive, that's what I'm asking, and there's nothing budgeted for.
Well, I know that we have the town, and specifically the police department, has spent a lot of time on traffic issues on Ogre Drive. We have electronic speed signs.
Yes.
We have had increased surveillance of people going up and down that street. The data that we have does not indicate we have a speeding problem.
Well, Since I live on that street, I would say I would challenge the data from a standpoint, only from the standpoint of you're not out there all the time, and it is a dangerous road to walk on. There's no sidewalks. As I've preached this before, it is a dangerous road to live on, and to be able to ride your bike, walk your dog, or do exercise. You can't do it on the road. You're forced to, but you can't. It's kind of like we need extra precaution. And the studies, the recommendation that was in the study that was done in 2020, I think would add to the safety and slow down traffic that right now continue to speed. And I was told by the chief, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's zero tolerance on that road in terms of speed. That means 15 miles an hour is 15 miles an hour. Nobody does 15 except the people that live on Overdrive. So if you think if 25 is okay, I just worry about that a little bit. Today was a great day because there's a moving van parked in the street, and the street is 19 feet wide. So that slows traffic down automatically because it's parked in the middle of the street. So things like that help, but there is a speed issue, a safety issue, and I hate to say speed because it's a safety issue. I've been pushed off the road numerous times. I've hurt myself numerous times because of speeders. Some reason they don't believe they have to stop if there's a pedestrian down the road. They just go right by it, and two cars come in. It's very dangerous. I asked for some help, and certainly those initiatives that were recommended would have been nice to be implemented, at least in 2023, 2024, however we can afford those in the upcoming 5-year budget. Thank you. If I may, for
One question I just wanted to ask Chief, the speed data, that's regular? That's being collected?
Every day, I look at it every single day, the average speed for the last 24 hours as of this afternoon on Overdrive is 17 miles per hour in both directions. And I look at that every single day.
Yeah, the only reason,
We look at it in comparison to other areas of town, and not to minimize, any of the issues on Overdrive, but they don't get me compared to the problems that we have on other roads. I can tell you this, that I think both the police department and Mr. Semino's department have given much more attention to Overdrive than any other street in town. Our officers spend a considerable amount of time
Yes, they do.
there. I have personally spoken with a number, not everybody yet, but a number of residents on Overdrive, got mixed reactions. Some of them feel there's no problem at all. Some of them feel that time to time there are problems. And there are, as there are on every single street in the town. So I'm not sure if you have recommendations of what they would be.
well, we'll take a look back at them. But the reason I asked was I just wanted to make sure, because you said, we're not out, you're there all the time. We're not. I just wanted to make sure we were collecting data all the time.
The information on every single vehicle that goes in and out on Overdrive,
Yeah.
24/7.
And I can't thank the chief and his officers, because they are out there. I mean, there's no kidding, and people do see them sitting on the corner of Muddy Neck and Over. So that's been helpful, but they can't sit there 24/7, nor do I expect that. But once they're there, it does slow traffic down because they see them. So I appreciate the consideration for that. A couple more and I'll get out of your way. With inflation running rampant, and we know it is, what percent, did you have a percent that you factored into your budgeting process for 23, 24, and so forth?
5.
Okay, so 5 was your,
Yeah. Let me see what page that's on.
because that will go through at least 24 or something, I think, at 7.5%. So as long as we have something in there to cover the anticipated increase in
Some of the
inflation.
things were departmental operating expenses. 5%
Good.
increase for the out years, for the operating.
Okay. Thank you. Does the purchase of replacement vehicles and I don't mean to be zeroing in on one department, but does the replacement of vehicles for planning and zoning need separate town council approval, or is that, would be that be approved in the budget submittal for 2023? There's money in there for 2023 for a vehicle purchase.
And that would have to be approved by the town council.
With this package or a separate request?
Separate, it comes before
Okay.
council separately,
Thank you.
included in the budget, and then has its own day.
Great. Is there, sorry, chief, but there's money in the budget earmarked, I think it's $4,800 for part-time or volunteer paid staff for the police department. Would they be new positions that would be opened up to all residents to apply for? These are summer months, I think, that you have that in the budget for.
Yeah, it's a casual seasonal position.
Okay.
And we have an employee that's been serving in that position for several years. And he's been trained and vetted by the police department. And he works basically Memorial Day, every day.
Saturdays and Sundays.
Saturdays and Sundays, Friday, Saturdays and Sundays to man the phones on the weekends when we're busy and keep the lobby board, police department, everything.
And they're very helpful, yeah. Would those positions be open to the residents, full-time residents in Ocean View?
Right now, we have one person that holds that job. Like I said, it's a casual seat job, so there's no openings there now.
But come in the summer months, seasonal?
It's a continuation. We have had this already, so this is just a continuation of what's been going on, where we
Yeah.
actually pay the person because of the higher and the weekend time. It became necessary to do that.
Now, that individual is essentially laid off.
Oh, wow.
He considers it laid off, it's a casual seasonal position, and he's brought
Well,
back
I
in the
just-
following year. So unless he would decide for some reason not to come back,
Okay.
which I don't believe is going to be the case this year,
Well,
if it would, then it would be opened, it's a posted position, it would be opened up.
Oh, I was hoping for a second career in the police department, but I'll have to postpone that. Thank you for that. And lastly, and I'll get out of your hair, are there any pending lawsuits against the town that may negatively impact the finances of the town? No? That's good to know. Thank you so much. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Any other comments?
Good evening, Elaine Saragi, 33159 Ogre Drive. Just a couple quick questions here. I did not see any revenue factored into the budget for any future annexation that's outlined in the comprehensive plan, and I was just curious why or why not. In the comprehensive plan, in the annexation section of the plan, it is talked about future annexation. This is a 5-year outlook, and I'm just wondering why those revenues are not included.
Yeah, we don't have them included because we don't at this time have any idea of anything coming in.
It's noted in the comprehensive plan, though, some things
That there's
are.
areas that are
Yeah.
eligible
Yeah,
because they're contiguous. And we're hopeful that there will be some, but there is nothing factored in.
And the thing about that issue is that we cannot go out and lobby
yep,
unincorporated areas to be annexed in. So we don't know if there's anything until someone comes and tells us.
right. And maybe that's the better question to ask. Has anyone come forward and requested annexation that you're not forecasting in the revenues?
Not yet.
Okay. I just want to go back to the lawsuits.
We have had some inquiries, but they're already under construction, such as Beach Club.
Beach Club North, yep,
And so that's
that's the one I'm aware of.
makes it a little difficult. They'd have to come back to us after they're finished.
Yeah, Ocean View Beach Club North is the one I'm aware of. And I was just curious specifically, that's a high number of homes, over 120 plus homes in there, plus the townhomes. So I was just curious why that wasn't being projected in the revenue.
We can't count on revenue that we have no intention, and there's a high, they have to vote, the residents have to vote, it has to be more than 50%.
But that development's planned to be completed before the end of this 5 years, so is that something you could adjust the budget, say if the vote comes in next year?
Yes.
If it came
We
in
look at
next
this
year?
Every year.
The out years are forecasted for planning purposes, but the year that counts is the year that where we know as much as we can. And if we know that somebody's coming in, it certainly would be included in the revenue.
So I want to go back to the similar question around lawsuits. So I think the question was asked around, are there any active lawsuits? I want to ask it a little bit differently. Are there any, let's say, pending, maybe not active or high-risk areas?
You know, the one pending or threatened,
Yeah,
either threatened by us or threatened by someone else,
yeah.
the answer still is no.
Okay, so let me,
We have one that we think that we anticipate, which has to do with the acquisition of easement for drainage purposes. I don't see that affecting the general overall budget.
there's two areas I'm aware of, and I'll give you examples of what I want to bring. So one is more of a question, going back to the safety on Ogre Drive. You know, at the top of Ogre Drive where it meets Muddy Neck Road, that's a school bus stop there. And I don't know if you've ever gone by there in the morning when kids are being dropped off and picked up, but the families with their kids stand right there at that Ogre Drive section. It's a really big safety concern for these kids running across the street and for parents to be standing there at the top of that road. And I'm just curious, again, if something happens. I also know we have residents on that road with disabilities, and there's no crosswalks to support them. There's no bike-
Residents on what road?
Ogre with disabilities. There's no crosswalks to support them. Crossing the street at the intersections there. Ogre and Velta. Ogre and Velta, the cross-section of Ogre and Velta, which is all Ocean View, as well as Ogre, across Ogre at the top, where to support the people who stand there to drop their kids off at the school bus.
Is this in Milda or at Muddy Neck?
No, I'm in Ocean View.
Those are the streets that intersect.
Ocean View. Velta was part of the annexation into Ocean View.
Muddy Neck's the
3 homes.
entrance.
Muddy Neck is the entrance, it's the right of way.
Okay, well, I think what we're trying to do here is talk about the budget.
Yeah,
that
so
is
in the
place,
context,
not adding anything to the budget.
no, I agree, not suggesting that. All I'm asking, going back to the legal question, if there was to be something that happened, and there was a safety incident, either being, as an example, someone who has a disability as a resident of that road and is injured, or, you know, an incident involving the safety of these children getting on the school bus every day, and lawsuit was brought against the town for that. I'm just asking to be educated how that happens within your budget. Do you have a certain amount of funds kept aside for litigation as like a reserve?
The town buys comprehensive general liability insurance, much like you do in your own home. So that if somebody fell on the front porch and banged their head or whatever, there's comprehensive general liability insurance. There's also a thing called the Municipal Tort Act, which limits the liability of the town in certain incidents. And the third thing that would go into which is not a fact that you have given us, but a fact that would get into decision-making, is whether or not there was some active negligence on the part of the town at the time of the accident. And those things would all come together, that there is insurance, there's what we used to call sovereign immunity, and then the facts that will drive that up.
So I imagine the insurance has been factored in your budget as an expense item?
Yes.
So they-
The insurance is factored in your budget as an expense item?
I believe
Business insurance has its own line item.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Did we have any questions that we had from YouTube? No. Okay.
Your Honor.
All right, so I think, we will close citizens' privilege, and, it's now for the town council to provide direction to the town manager regarding the fiscal year 2023 budget as proposed. So I think, as we have heard previously, and up through this time, we commend you and the budget director for the comprehensive budget that you presented to us. I believe that it is fair and addresses all of the concerns that we have had previously leading up to the budget discussion. And I believe that the budget is as presented should go forward so that we can prepare the ordinance. That is my personal opinion. But I'm going to ask every town council member to weigh in as well. Right?
I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should go as the budget is proposed. I have no problem with it.
I also agree to go with the proposed budget as stated.
So that would make my point. I think you have.
Councilman
Excuse me?
I know Councilman Malley was supposed to be here last
Yes.
week.
He has sent me a text message. He could not make this meeting. He said he supports and is in favor of approval of the OSHA 2023 budget as submitted by Financial Director Dawn Fox in its current form. Signed, Thomas Malley. So I think you have the direction from us.
Okay.
Are there any further questions or comments to be made?
I have none.
None as well.
All right, then.
May I ask you, would that mean that we do not need to plan the March 22nd workshop?
I don't think
Just-
so.
Okay, just checking.
All right, then, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So passes. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.